It began with a phone that should not have been active at all. The device had been dead for weeks, its battery swollen, its screen cracked, and its service disconnected after the owner's death. It was kept in a drawer inside a quiet suburban house, no longer used, no longer charged, and no longer expected to matter. But just after 2 a.m., that same phone lit up in the darkness and began to ring. At first, the family thought someone had mistakenly powered it back on earlier in the day, but when they opened the drawer, the screen was glowing with an incoming call from an unknown number. The sound filled the room with a tone that felt wrong for the hour, wrong for the silence, and wrong for a phone that was supposed to be useless. The woman who found the phone later said the first thing that unsettled her was not the call itself, but the way the screen looked. The battery symbol showed no charge percentage at all. There was no service bar, no network icon, and no normal indication that the device had connected to anything. Yet the call continued, vibrating lightly against the wooden surface beneath it. She stared at the unknown number for several seconds, unsure whether to answer. The phone had belonged to her brother, who had died in a car accident the previous month. Since then, no one had touched the device except to store it away. Still, the ring persisted, steady and patient, as if expecting someone in that room to respond. When she finally answered, she expected static, a prank, or perhaps a delayed voicemail glitch. Instead, she heard breathing. It was faint at first, uneven and close to the microphone, the kind of sound that instantly makes silence feel smaller. She said hello twice, then asked who was calling. For several seconds, there was no answer. Then a voice came through. It was quiet, low, and strained, but unmistakably familiar. She would later insist with absolute certainty that it sounded like her brother. Not like a recording, not like an old voicemail replayed through damaged audio. It sounded immediate, present, and aware. He said only 3 words before the line cut. "Don't let him in." The words did not feel like a dream because she was fully awake by then, standing in the kitchen under the weak yellow light above the sink. The moment the call ended, she looked toward the hallway instinctively, as if the warning had pointed her there without needing to say more. The house was quiet, but not peacefully quiet. It was the kind of silence that seems to reveal how many doors exist in a home and how little separates one room from the next. No one else in the family had woken up yet. She stood frozen for several seconds, phone still warm in her hand, listening for movement beyond the kitchen. Nothing happened, but the warning had changed the atmosphere completely. The house no longer felt like a place at rest. It felt like a place waiting. About a minute later, there was a knock at the front door. Not loud, not violent, just 3 slow impacts spaced evenly apart. She did not move. The rest of the house remained dark. Another knock followed, then silence again. It would have been easy to explain under other circumstances. Someone at the wrong address, a neighbor needing help, an ordinary interruption, but nothing about the timing felt ordinary. She checked the peephole and saw no one on the porch. Rain glistened under the porch light, and the street beyond looked empty. Yet the knock had been real. She was certain of it. She backed away from the door and clutched the dead phone harder, still trying to understand whether she had just heard her dead brother's voice warn her about something standing outside. The family's doorbell camera should have resolved the situation immediately. It had a direct view of the porch, the walkway, and part of the driveway. When she checked the live feed, the image showed exactly what the people had shown: an empty porch under soft rain, no figure, no movement, and no sign that anyone had been there at all. But when she opened the event history, the camera had registered motion at the exact time of the knocks. It had even saved a clip. In the recording, the porch light flickered once, and the microphone picked up the knocking clearly. Yet the video itself showed nothing causing it. No hand, no shadow, no person stepping into frame. It was as if the house had been visited by a presence capable of making sound without occupying visible space. Police were called just before 3 a.m. The responding officer listened carefully examined the front entry, and reviewed the saved camera clip. He found no signs of forced entry, no footprints on the porch beyond rain scatter, and no evidence that anyone had approached the house on foot or by vehicle. The caller's account sounded impossible, but the officer admitted the recorded knocking was difficult to dismiss. What he could not explain, however, was the phone. When she showed it to him, the device had gone dark again. He tried the power button, nothing. He plugged it into a charger in the kitchen, still nothing. According to him, it behaved exactly like a dead phone with a failed battery, yet she had answered a live call on it less than 20 minutes earlier. The phone was later examined by a technician known to the family, partly out of curiosity and partly because no one trusted the explanation of a simple electrical glitch. Internally, the device was in worse condition than expected. Corrosion had formed near the charging port, the battery was unstable, and the main board showed damage consistent with impact and age. In the technician's words, the phone should not have been able to boot properly, much less receive a call or sustain audio. But the strangest detail came from the call history. There was no record of the incoming number, no missed call, no answered call, no new timestamp at all. The phone's history ended 2 weeks ago, the last saved entry placed there before the funeral. Once word spread through the family, everyone responded differently. Some believed grief had distorted perception. Others focused on the practical details, the knocking, the camera alert, the dead phone that had briefly behaved as if connected to the world again. But no one could ignore the content of the warning, "Don't let him in." The sentence seemed too specific to dismiss completely, yet too ambiguous to understand. Who was him? Why would a warning come in that form? And why that house, on that night, after weeks of silence? The phone itself remained inert, offering no second chance to test what had happened. The absence of repeatability made the event more unsettling, not less. If it had happened again, it might have become a pattern. Instead, it remained a single, impossible interruption. The neighborhood offered no answers. Security cameras from 2 nearby houses were reviewed the next day, covering parts of the sidewalk and street in front of the property. No person approached the front door around the time of the knocks. No car slowed outside. No one crossed the yard or driveway. The only visible movement came from rain and shifting tree branches. Yet the timeline remained clear. The knocks had been heard. The porch camera registered motion. The phone had rung. A voice had spoken. Every piece of the event had left some trace, but no trace connected cleanly to the others, as if each part belonged to a different version of the same night. Because the call itself had not been saved by the dead phone, the family checked another possibility. During the event, the woman had unknowingly activated a voice memo app on her own phone while trying to call emergency services. The recording captured only part of the kitchen audio, but analysts later isolated something important: the ringing tone from the dead phone, her voice answering, and a faint reply that was too damaged to be fully restored. Experts could not confirm that the words were exactly what she remembered, but they did agree on one thing: there had been a second voice on that audio, and it did not sound like her. For the next several nights, no one in the house slept well. The chain remained on the front door even during the day, and lights were left on in rooms that would normally stay dark. Rational explanations were repeated often: faulty memory, prank call, grief, electrical anomaly, but they never settled fully into certainty. What disturbed the family most was not just the voice and the knocks, it was the timing of the warning and the exact way it had changed their behavior. No one had opened the door that night, no one had gone outside, and because of that, they would never know whether the warning had prevented something or merely created fear. 3 days after the call, a neighbor mentioned something odd. Around the same hour that night, he had looked out through his upstairs blinds after hearing what he thought was a car door shut. He claimed to have seen a man standing across the street facing the house. The figure remained still for several seconds before stepping backwards into a darker section near the trees. The neighbor had assumed it was someone waiting for a ride and thought little of it at the time.
By the time police reviewed his statement, no supporting footage existed. Still, the image of a silent figure outside the home gave the warning a more tangible shape than anyone wanted. Phone company records were requested in the hope that the mystery could be reduced to a technical event, but the results only added another contradiction. At 2:07 a.m., a signal did register near the property, just not through any number tied to the deceased man's device. The network log showed a brief, unidentified handshake event, too short to classify as a standard incoming call and too incomplete to trace to a tower route with confidence. Engineers later called it non-actionable data noise, but that label satisfied no one who had been inside the house when the call came through. The system had detected something. It simply could not describe it in normal terms. The kitchen where the call was answered became
location data in real time. The vehicle was active, moving, and technically still in service, even though the driver had not checked in with dispatch as required after the final stop. Attempts to contact the onboard radio produced only static. A maintenance ping to the vehicle computer returned successfully, which meant the bus systems were still functioning normally. That result only made the situation stranger. Mechanical systems were responding, GPS remained active, and onboard electronics showed no fault severe enough to explain a communications blackout. The bus was still part of the network, still visible on city tracking maps, and yet no one in control could establish contact with whoever or whatever was operating it. Street camera footage captured the bus passing through several intersections where it had no reason to be. The roads were nearly empty, the surrounding buildings dark, and the route strangely consistent, as if following a destination not listed on any transit map. It stopped once at an abandoned shelter where no passenger was present. The front door opened, remained open for 6 seconds, then closed again. No one got on, no one got off. The moment unsettled investigators because it suggested a continuation of routine. The bus was still behaving like a public vehicle, still acknowledging stops, still following some internal logic, even though the scheduled route had ended. If the bus had simply malfunctioned, random movement would have made more sense. But this was not random. It looked procedural, intentional, and eerily calm, like a service continuing long after it should have been over. One camera in an industrial district showed the bus slowing beside a shelter that had been officially removed from active service months earlier. The signpost remained, but no buses were supposed to stop there anymore. Yet the vehicle pulled in precisely, aligned with the curb as though following an old route still stored in its memory. The doors opened again. This time, the grainy exterior angle seemed to show a shadow near the front entrance, but the image quality was too poor to confirm whether it was a person, a reflection, or camera noise caused by the rain. When analysts enhanced the footage later, the shape remained inconclusive. Still, it introduced a possibility no one liked discussing openly. If the bus had opened for someone, then perhaps the route had not continued empty at all. Perhaps there had been a passenger left unseen by the interior cameras, or something else entirely. Investigators reviewed the rear interior feed repeatedly, searching for any missed detail. Most of the ride showed only rows of empty seats, faint vibrations from the road, and reflections sliding across the rain-streaked windows. But in one sequence lasting less than 3 seconds, a pale shape appeared near the back corner of the bus. It did not enter from the aisle, and it did not resemble a passenger standing up.